Welcome to the deep dive. We're looking at a geopolitical earthquake today.
Yeah, truly an earthquake.
Right. We're talking about an event of such massive scale that the entire landscape of the Middle East was completely rewritten. And this all happened in just 72 hours in early March 2026.
Just 3 days.
Exactly. So to help you understand exactly what transpired, we've pulled together a massive stack of intelligence. We've got breaking news reports, military briefings, and high-level geopolitical analyses.
There's a lot of material to get through.
It is. And our mission is to unpack all of this for you to understand two incredibly consequential developments. First, the sudden death of Iran's supreme leader, Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. And second, the stunning, really historic fall of Hezbollah's military legitimacy in Lebanon.
Before we go any further, though, I need to establish some crucial context for you, the listener.
Please do.
The material we're analyzing today contains highly politically charged content. It involves the United States, Israel, Iran, Lebanon, and really the broader region.
Right.
So in this deep dive, we are not endorsing any viewpoints. We are not taking political sides. And we are certainly not supporting any specific military actions.
Absolutely not.
Our role is strictly and impartially to report the ideas and the facts contained in the source material. We just want to help you understand the reality of the situation on the ground. Nothing more, nothing less.
Perfectly said. We are strictly sticking to the facts from our briefings. Okay, let's unpack this because the timeline here moves with terrifying speed.
It really does.
We are looking at an unprecedented joint U.S. Israeli strike on Tehran, a massive Iranian retaliation spanning 9 different countries, Hezbollah's surprisingly delayed entry into the fray, and finally a completely unprecedented pushback from the Lebanese government itself.
A lot of dominoes falling very fast.
Right. So let's start right at the catalyst. Saturday, February 28th, 2026. What exactly happened that night?
Well, intelligence indicated that Ayatollah Ali Khamenei would be attending a meeting with senior Iranian officials in Tehran. And that specific gathering became the target of a joint U.S. and Israeli decapitation strike. And the immediate aftermath was it was devastating to Iran's leadership structure.
How devastating are we talking?
Well, President Trump stated publicly that 48 Iranian leaders were gone in one shot.
Wow.
Yeah. He also noted that Washington sank 9 Iranian naval ships, which he described as relatively large and important vessels.
And on the ground in Tehran?
The human toll was extensive. Iran's state broadcaster, citing figures from the Iranian Red Crescent Society, reported 201 dead, along with 747 injured.
I want you to just imagine the sheer logistical chaos of that for a second. It's like the entire C-suite and board of directors of a massive global corporation just disappearing overnight.
That's a good way to put it.
But instead of worrying about losing stock value, you're trying to run a multi-front war. You wake up and the people running the government, the military, the religious institutions, they're suddenly just gone.
Exactly. And what's fascinating here is the constitutional crisis this creates during wartime.
Because there's a specific process.
Right. Under normal circumstances, Iran's constitution is very clear. It requires an assembly of experts to convene and carefully choose a successor to the supreme leader.
But right now, that simply may not be possible.
Precisely. Because the assembly of experts was caught in the strike.
So they were literally in the room.
Many of them, yes. With so many of the country's top power brokers and potential successors targeted and killed, the normal, legally mandated succession process is completely fractured.
So who is running things?
An interim council has had to step in and take charge. So Iran is confronting this incredibly murky, improvised leadership transition right when it faces its biggest external threat in decades.
But despite that massive leadership vacuum at the very top, the Iranian military apparatus didn't just freeze up.
No, they did not.
They executed a massive response, which triggers the 48-hour regional firestorm. Talk to me about the scale of this counterattack, because it wasn't just directed at Israel, right?
Not at all. It was unprecedented in its geographic scope. Within just 36 hours of the strike on Tehran, Iranian drones and missiles were launched across 9 different countries.
9 countries.
Yeah. They hit Israel, Iraq, and Jordan, but they also targeted the entire Gulf Cooperation Council.
So we are talking about strikes flying into the UAE, Bahrain, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, Oman, Qatar.
Every single one of them.
You really get a sense of the apocalyptic scale when you look at the footage from the ground. There were reports of black smoke billowing over the United Arab Emirates.
And back in Tehran, the collateral damage from the initial strikes was horrific too.
Right, the hospital.
Yes. The 10-story Gandhi Hospital had its entire front facade blown off. You had debris crushing cars in the street below, and medical staff literally rolling incubators carrying newborns through rubble-filled streets.
It's just terrifying imagery. And the reach of Iran's retaliation went even further than the Middle East, didn't it?
It did. The UK reported a suspected Iranian drone strike on the RAF Akrotiri base in Cyprus.
Which is huge.
Huge. If that is fully confirmed, that represents Iran's first attack on European soil.
And tragically, we know there was a severe human toll for the United States during this barrage.
Yes. The hostilities resulted in the deaths of 3 U.S. Army troops.
Where were they stationed?
They were part of a sustainment unit stationed in Kuwait. U.S. Central Command also reported that 5 other service members were seriously wounded, with an unspecified number of others suffering minor shrapnel injuries and concussions.
So it was a rapid, deadly escalation.
It immediately heightened concerns about the Pentagon's ability to protect personnel spread across such a volatile region.
With U.S. bases taking hits like that and missiles flying into the Gulf states, I would assume our Arab allies would want to stay as far out of the crossfire as possible.
That's what you would think.
Historically, there's always been this fear that if push came to shove, regional partners wouldn't support U.S. and Israeli strikes against Iran because they'd be terrified of exactly this kind of retaliation.
That was the assumption for years. But that brings us to a major strategic revelation from the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General Dan Kane.
What did he say?
He pointed out that as the threat grew, those Arab partners actually stepped up.
Really?
Yeah. Air defense batteries in Qatar, the UAE, Kuwait, Jordan, and Saudi Arabia didn't just hunker down.
Yeah.
They actively joined the fight to intercept the incoming Iranian strikes.
That is a massive shift in regional dynamics.
General Kane called it proof positive that years of quiet military integration and training had actually paid off.
You have Gulf states actively defending airspace alongside U.S. and Israeli interests. That's incredible.
It's a completely new paradigm.
But, you know, it's one thing to see the Gulf states step up. The northern border with Israel is where everyone expected the real explosion. The assumption for years was that Khamenei's death was an automatic tripwire for Hezbollah.
Right. Hezbollah had stated publicly, time and time again, that the death of Khamenei was a hard red line.
A point of no return.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The expectation was that it would automatically trigger them joining a broader regional conflict with everything they had.
Yet Khamenei was killed on Saturday, and Hezbollah delayed their response until March 1st. They hesitated.
They did.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because we have an incredibly detailed briefing from Sarit Zahavi.
She's a fantastic source for this.
Right. She's a former officer in the IDF's Military Intelligence Corps and president of the Alma Research and Education Center. She explains exactly why that hesitation happened, and it completely reframes how we view Hezbollah right now.
Zahavi's analysis points to a paramilitary force that was simply depleted.
Depleted.
The big takeaway here is that Hezbollah's defining identity as the ultimate resistance force was overridden by cold, hard math. They simply couldn't afford a full-scale war, and Tehran knew it.
Because of their involvement after October 7th.
Exactly. Remember, Hezbollah had joined Hamas in conducting attacks against Israel following the October 7, 2023 incursion.
Right.
Over the subsequent 24 months of intense combat leading up to this point, Hezbollah had lost around 80% of its military capability.
80%?
80%.
So they were basically running on empty.
By the time this March 2026 crisis erupted, they were down to a stockpile of about 25,000 rockets and roughly 1,000 drones.
Which sounds like a lot until you realize what they used to have.
Exactly. Now, they had been desperately trying to replenish those capabilities through domestic manufacturing and by smuggling weapons from Iran through Syria.
But the Israelis were hitting those routes.
Hard. Those routes had been severely degraded by Israeli airstrikes. Zahavi noted that it took a while for Iran to even give the order to Hezbollah.
So it wasn't an automatic trigger?
No, it was likely a very calculated delay, weighing their religious and ideological motivation against the stark reality of Hezbollah's depleted state.
But eventually they did act.
Yeah.
The order came through, and Hezbollah fired a barrage of rockets and drones at Israel's Mishmar HaCarmel missile defense site, just south of Haifa. And Israel's response was overwhelming.
Overwhelming is the right word. It was a massive wave of strikes on Beirut's southern suburbs and the Bekaa Valley in eastern Lebanon.
Hitting what exactly?
The IDF reported hitting more than 70 weapons storage facilities and launch sites. And they didn't just go after the munitions. They went after Hezbollah's wallet.
The financial infrastructure.
Right. They specifically targeted buildings belonging to Al-Qard al-Hassan, the Hezbollah-linked financial firm.
And the casualties there.
According to the Lebanese government, those Israeli retaliation strikes killed at least 52 people and injured 154.
With all of this escalating across the Lebanese border, where was the UN in all this? Don't they have a peacekeeping force stationed right there?
You're referring to UNIFIL, and it is really worth noting their complete absence during this escalation.
They just didn't engage.
When asked about potentially liaising with UNIFIL to de-escalate the situation, Sarit Zahavi was incredibly scornful. She stated that the UN force had actually damaged previous efforts to disarm Hezbollah.
How so?
She brought up a specific incident from 2025 where UNIFIL actually shot down an IDF drone. But according to her, they never once opened fire on Hezbollah drones and never initiated searches for Hezbollah weapons in southern Lebanon.
Which brings us to what might be the most shocking development in this entire deep dive.
The political shift.
Exactly, because while Hezbollah was getting hammered by Israel, the political ground beneath them in Lebanon completely collapsed.
It was a true turning point.
In the wake of those rocket launches, Lebanese Prime Minister Nawaf Salam took an unprecedented step. He publicly declared that all of Hezbollah's military and security activities were entirely illegal.
Just completely outlawed them.
Yes. He invoked the power of the Lebanese state, demanding the immediate prohibition of their armed operations and obliging Hezbollah to hand over its weapons.
And the political nuance of this moment cannot be overstated.
Right, because of who supported it.
Exactly. This wasn't just a unilateral decree by Hezbollah's long-standing political opponents in Lebanon. Two ministers from the Amal movement actually approved the cabinet's decision.
Wait, remind me how the Amal movement fits into this?
The Amal movement is a fellow Shiite political party. Historically, they have been a key foundational ally of Hezbollah.
And yet they signed off on this.
They did. Even a minister specifically named by Hezbollah to represent the group in the government reportedly signed off on the cabinet measure.
Think about that.
It's wild. That level of internal governmental solidarity against Hezbollah's military wing is completely unprecedented.
And the government didn't just make a symbolic statement. They took immediate domestic legal action, right?
Yes. The military judiciary issued formal arrest warrants for the individuals responsible for firing the rockets at Haifa.
Arrest warrants.
Right. The government commissioner to the military court, Claude Ghanem, requested that security agencies identify the perpetrators, arrest them immediately, and refer them to the military public prosecution.
And the cabinet also invoked the November 2024 ceasefire agreement.
They did.
They explicitly insisted that the Lebanese state must have an absolute monopoly on arms north of the Litani River. The cabinet didn't just ask them to stop. They drew a hard line at the Litani River to enforce a physical buffer zone.
Which is the line mandated by UN Resolution 1701.
Right. They're basically telling Hezbollah, you have no legal right to operate a military force here.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we have to look back at that 2024 war.
How does that play in?
Well, that conflict killed most of Hezbollah's top military and political leaders. They were structurally gutted. That historical context is exactly why they are so uniquely vulnerable to this government crackdown right now.
How did Hezbollah react to being outlawed by their own government?
Defensively. They called the measures unjustified and pointed to the government's impotence in defending national sovereignty against Israel.
But the words don't change the reality.
No, the structural shift in Lebanese politics is undeniable. The state is finally asserting authority over a militia that has operated entirely independently for decades.
But while the political tectonic plates are shifting in Beirut, the civilian impact on the ground is horrific. You have ordinary people caught in the middle of this.
It's a tragedy.
The briefings describe absolute panic in Lebanon. Following the Israeli strikes, Beirut experienced completely gridlocked traffic as residents desperately tried to flee the southern suburbs.
And the chaos was immediate.
There were reports of screaming in the streets early in the morning. People were abandoning their homes, carrying whatever they could fit in cars and on motorcycles.
And at the exact same time, the Israeli military ordered the mass evacuation of around 50 villages across southern Lebanon and the Bekaa Valley.
50 villages?
Yeah. They were telling civilians to move at least 1,000 meters away from the villages into open areas. And Israel backed up that posture by mobilizing roughly 100,000 reservists along the border.
It's a powder keg. But the ripple effects of this regional firestorm didn't stay confined to the Middle East. And this is something we really need to unpack because it reached globally,
It did.
including a chilling tragedy in the United States. In Austin, Texas, a man fatally shot 2 people and wounded 14 others at a local bar early Sunday morning.
Authorities identified the shooter as Ndiaga Dieng. He was a 53-year-old naturalized U.S. citizen originally from Senegal.
And his motives.
Well, at the time of the shooting, Dieng was wearing a shirt with an Iranian flag that read "Property of Allah," and investigators found a Quran in his vehicle.
So they believe it was connected.
Officials briefed on the investigation stated he may have been directly motivated by the U.S. military campaign in Iran.
It really brings the psychological terror of this geopolitical reality right into your own backyard.
It does.
You see a conflict thousands of miles away manifesting as a mass casualty event in Texas. It highlights how these conflicts are no longer localized. The idea of lone wolf retaliation means the front line can suddenly be a bar in Austin.
It's the dark side of globalization. And while that domestic tragedy was unfolding, the diplomatic and military maneuvering globally was moving just as fast.
Give me an example.
Well, British Prime Minister Keir Starmer announced that he had granted a U.S. request to use British bases.
For offensive strikes.
No, he specified this was for a limited defensive purpose, specifically to strike Iranian missile sites that were actively threatening Allied assets.
Got it. And the U.S. State Department also authorized the departure of non-essential staff and family members from the U.S. Embassy in Kuwait, clearly bracing for continued instability.
They are definitely preparing for the long haul.
So what does this all mean for the immediate future? When will this end? Because you have President Trump telling the Daily Mail that he predicts the military process will take 4 weeks or less.
A 4-week timeline is incredibly ambitious.
Too ambitious.
Probably. Because the prospect for a swift diplomatic resolution seems incredibly low right now. The Wall Street Journal had initially reported that Ali Larijani, the Secretary of Iran's Supreme National Security Council, had reached out through Omani mediators to resume nuclear negotiations.
Which would have signaled they wanted an off-ramp.
Right. But Larijani himself firmly and publicly denied that report.
He denied it.
He took to social media and stated plainly, "We will not negotiate with the United States."
So they're digging in.
This signals that despite the massive loss of leadership, the decapitation strike, and the devastating counterattacks, the remaining power brokers in Tehran are maintaining a very hardline stance. They are not blinking.
To synthesize all of this for you, well, the sheer velocity of the information we've covered today is breathtaking.
It's a lot to process.
In the span of just a few days, we witnessed a decapitation strike that removed Ayatollah Ali Khamenei and dozens of top Iranian leaders, creating a massive constitutional void.
We saw an immediate, massive Iranian retaliation creating a crossfire over 9 countries.
Fundamentally testing the air defenses and the loyalty of the Gulf states. And we saw Hezbollah, depleted from years of war and running on empty, hesitate to defend its primary patron.
And ultimately, we saw the Lebanese government take the historic, unprecedented step of outlawing Hezbollah's military wing.
Backed by arrest warrants and the support of Hezbollah's own political allies, the Middle East has been structurally transformed in under a week.
This raises an important question.
What's that?
For decades, the Middle East's geopolitical chessboard has been defined by proxy militias operating outside state control. Groups like Hezbollah projecting Iranian power without facing any state accountability.
Right.
With Hezbollah now officially outlawed by a Lebanese government backed by Hezbollah's own allies, and Iran's leadership structure fractured and struggling to maintain its own continuity, are we witnessing the permanent end of the proxy militia era in the Middle East?
That is the big question.
And if so, what kind of conventional state-to-state conflicts will fill that volatile vacuum?
That is a profound thought to leave you with as you process all of this. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. The world is changing rapidly, so keep questioning, keep exploring, and we will be right here to help you make sense of it all next time.